Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're setting aside the usual texts and stones, well, mostly, and really tuning into sound, ancient sound.
That's right. We're essentially embarking on a kind of sonic archaeology project, using the fantastic collection at the Grand Egyptian Museum, the GEM, as our guide.
It's an amazing place to start. I mean, it's right there near Giza, the world's biggest archaeological museum. Everyone talks to Tutankhamun's, obviously, but there's this other focus, isn't there?
Exactly. The GM has this really important mandate to look beyond just the objects. They're seriously invested in what we call intangible heritage. And for us today, that means sound. We're asking, what did ancient Egypt actually sound like?
And that's the core question for this deep dive, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do we reconstruct a soundscape when, famously, they didn't leave us musical scores, no sheet music?
Right, that's the challenge. It means we have to pull together evidence from different places, artifacts, reliefs, texts. But critically, we don't have that direct notation.
So where do we even begin trying to, extract reliable information? How do we get from a silent harp to actual sound?
It involves some pretty specialized fields. We lean heavily on archaeomusicology, studying music in archaeological contexts, and also organology. That's the science of the instruments themselves, how they were built, their materials, their physical properties.
Okay, organology, like studying the organ of the instrument.
Precisely. And then you combine that with rigorous acoustic analysis on the surviving instruments. You measure resonance, you figure out material density, you try to bridge that gap between the physical thing and the vibrations it could have made.
And it's just staggering how long this musical tradition went on for. We're talking evidence from the pre-dynastic period, right? Around 3100 BC.
All the way from back then, yeah, right through the dynasties, deep into the Roman era, so 4th century AD. It wasn't just, a sideline. Music was absolutely central to their culture for thousands of years.
A cultural pillar, not just background noise.
Oh, much more than that. The word they used, HS, it's often translated as music, but it's deeper. It means something like divine joy, allegria divina.
Divine joy. Wow, that definitely changes how you think about it. It's not just tunes, it's cosmic connection.
That seems to be the idea, yes. It wasn't just for fun, it was a way of interacting with the sacred, with the fundamental order of things.
Okay, so if this HS, this divine joy, was so fundamental, how did they manage it? How did they structure and pass it on without writing it down?
Well, they had a really sophisticated system, just not one based on notation as we know it. We see evidence everywhere. The tomb reliefs are incredible sources, places like Saqqara, Beni Hassan, Amarna. They show musicians, instruments, performance contexts.
So the pictures give us clues.
Huge clues. Then you have textual evidence hymns written on papyri. And of course, the actual surviving instruments we find in tombs.
And how did that system work in practice? Oral tradition.
Exactly. It relied heavily on oral transmission, probably through guilds of musicians. Plus, there were highly developed ideas about rhythmic cycles and even specific musical scales they believed were linked to the natural acoustic properties of the materials they used: reeds, strings, wood.
So a really different framework. What was music for then, in their eyes, if it wasn't just entertainment?
It had serious work to do. Placating the gods was a big one, celebrating military victories, regulating soldiers on the march, and maybe most importantly, facilitating the journey to the afterlife. Music was essential for that transition.
So forget the idea of ancient concert halls.
Pretty much. Music happened within important social and sacred events. It animated them.
Can you give an example, like what would a performance setting look like?
Okay, think about the New Kingdom tombs, say around 1550 to 1070 BC. The wall paintings often show these lavish banquets for the elite. And right there you see professional musicians. They even had a name for them.
Hiss.
Ew.
Professional musicians.
Yes, and interestingly, often women, playing quite complex instruments, lutes, double oboes, and singing what seem to be murat, which translates roughly as love songs.
Love songs at elite banquets. So a sophisticated professional scene, even in private life.
Absolutely. But then contrast that with the huge public spectacles, things like the big royal processions or the Opet festival down in Luxor.
Right, the massive religious festivals.
Exactly. There the music was different. Lots of trumpets, drums, big percussion. It wasn't about intimate emotion. It was about projecting power, maintaining order, announcing the pharaoh, linking his rule to the divine rhythm of the cosmos.
Okay, that makes sense. Order and power through sound. So let's talk about the compositions. If they weren't written scores, what were they passing down?
They were essentially formalized poems or hymns, also called H's, set to rhythmic structures. These were learned and transmitted orally, likely within these specialized musician guilds we mentioned, to keep them consistent over time.
So memorized structures, maybe with room for improvisation.
Possibly, yes, especially within certain frameworks. The structure was often quite repetitive, cyclical. The goal wasn't necessarily telling a linear story like a modern song, but creating a specific mood, a lasting resonance, maybe even a trance-like state.
Can we get more specific? Are there famous examples we know about?
Definitely. One of the most moving is called the Harper Song, or Kin NHSS. We find versions of this inscribed in New Kingdom tombs, like the tomb of Patnamheb.
The Harper Song, what's it about?
It's basically an existential ballad. It reflects on how short life is, the uncertainty of death, the need to enjoy the moment. Really quite profound stuff, usually accompanied by just a harp.
Wow, an ancient Egyptian existential ballad. How would the music itself convey that kind of feeling?
Well, based on analysis of related texts and instrument capabilities, the thinking is it likely used specific repeating patterns, maybe heptatonic scales, 7 notes like our major scale. The repetition and the scale structure were probably designed to draw you in, make you contemplative.
So the music itself is doing philosophical work.
That seems to be the idea. It's a tool for transcendence. Another example would be the Osirian hymns.
Linked to Osiris, god of the afterlife.
Exactly. We find texts for these in things like the Book of the Dead, on papyri like the Ani papyrus. These were sung sequences, absolutely crucial for resurrection rituals.
And the sound there, different from the Harper Song.
Probably. The focus seems to have been more on rhythm and harmony, maybe using simpler pentatonic scales, just 5 notes. That often gives a more sort of primal or ancient sound to our ears. It's thought this might connect back to the really early pre-dynastic flutes, establishing these core vibrations.
This hints at changes over time, doesn't it? The music wasn't static for 3,000 years.
Not at all. There's a clear evolution. You go from what seems like the sparser, perhaps more focused sound of the Old Kingdom, maybe just a solo flute, very monochromatic, to the much richer polychromatic sound of the New Kingdom. That's when you get these mixed ensembles with lutes, lyres, more percussion, a much fuller texture.
And it kept evolving. Did outside influences come in?
Oh, yes. By the Hellenistic period, especially in a cosmopolitan center like Alexandria, things got really sophisticated. You see influences from Greece and elsewhere.
Like what?
Well, the most mind-blowing example is probably the hydraulic organ, developed in Alexandria, 3rd century BC.
A water-powered organ in ancient Egypt.
Incredible, isn't it? It used water pressure to create a steady airflow, allowing for sustained notes and complex harmonies that were impossible with just breath power. It shows a huge leap in acoustic engineering.
That completely shatters the image of just harps and flutes.
It really does. But while you have these high-tech developments, you also have the everyday sounds. We can't forget work songs.
Ah, yes, the music of daily life.
Absolutely essential. Tomb scenes, like in the tomb of Mena, show people working in the fields, planting, harvesting. And there are musicians, often just with simple flutes or even just clapping hands providing a rhythm. These were probably improvised, practical tunes to keep everyone working together, in sync with the agricultural cycles. Music as a practical timekeeper.
Right, so let's bring this back to the GM and its collection. You mentioned this focus on pre-funerary functionality. What does that mean exactly?
It means the museum emphasizes instruments that show clear signs of having been used during the owner's lifetime, not just made brand new to be put in a tomb. They were functional tools, not just symbols.
Okay, and how does the GEM display or categorize these functional instruments?
They use the standard organological categories, grouping them by how they produce sound, but always connecting it back to their materials and likely use in life.
So starting with the strings, the chordophones.
Right. This includes things like the angular harp Tutankhamun's is a prime example, though harps go way back before him, maybe 2600 BC or earlier. Also lyres and lutes.
And what were they made of? Local materials?
Mostly, yes. Sycamore wood was common for the bodies. Strings were often gut or maybe vegetable fibers. And we know from the reliefs they were often used for accompanying singers, especially in those more intimate banquet settings.
And is that where the modern acoustic analysis comes in? Trying to figure out their sound?
Exactly. The GM supports research that looks closely at the construction. For instance, calculating the internal volume of a lute's sound box, maybe 200, 300 cubic centimeters. That volume directly impacts the tone, the resonance, the fundamental pitch it could produce. It helps us estimate the scales they might have used.
Fascinating. Okay, next group. The aerophones. The wind instruments.
A really varied group here. You have long reed flutes, double oboes, which sound quite distinctive, a bit like a modern oboe, but maybe more nasal, and of course, Tutankhamun's famous trumpets, one silver, one copper.
The ones they blew in the 20th century.
Those are the ones. Primarily signal instruments, it seems, for military calls, processions, temple rituals. But modern reconstructions show they could produce more than just a single blast. They could manage some harmonic variation. Testing them helps understand the breath pressure needed, confirming they were practical for signaling over distances.
And the last group. Percussion.
The aerophones, yes. Instruments that make sound through vibration of their own body. The classic examples are the sistra, those U-shaped rattles, often with metal discs.
Often associated with the goddess Hathor, right?
Precisely. Crucial in her rituals. And also things called menet collars, which were like heavy necklaces with beads that would clatter together rhythmically, often made of faience, bronze, sometimes even ivory or coral. They weren't just jewelry, they were rhythm instruments, likely used in dances and religious ceremonies to create that hypnotic, driving sound.
So this acoustic analysis, connecting the object to the sound, is really central to what the GM is trying to achieve.
It absolutely is. It's about bringing these objects back to life, acoustically speaking, moving beyond just looking at them in a glass case and trying to hear the world they came from.
Okay, let's dive deeper into one specific artifact that really seems to capture this New Kingdom musical world, the Lute of Har-Mose.
Ah, yes. A wonderful piece. It dates to around 1400 BC, the height of the New Kingdom. And it tells us so much.
Who was Har-Mose?
He was a smate, that means a professional singer, and he served a very powerful pharaoh, Amenhotep III. We know this because the lute was found in his tomb in Thebes, TT 42.
A professional musician's actual instrument. What makes it stand out physically?
Well, compared to the big harps, it's quite portable, about 90 centimeters long. Made of sycamore wood, the sound box covered with leather. Originally, it probably had 6, maybe 8 gut strings. We even have the bone plectrum he used to play it.
Amazing detail.
Yeah.
And the tuning.
It had an adjustable knot system for tuning. That's significant because it allows for more precise pitch control than some earlier instruments. You could really fine-tune it.
You mentioned something about the neck being bent. What's the significance there?
That's a key feature. The bent neck, along with some other design aspects, and an inscription invoking Hathor strongly suggests influence from Mesopotamia.
Ah, so cultural exchange, not purely Egyptian.
Exactly. It shows how interconnected the ancient Near East was during the New Kingdom. Ideas, technologies, musical styles, they were traveling along trade routes. This kind of lute, more portable and maybe more suited for personal expression, was different from the traditional large Egyptian harp.
A symbol of globalization, ancient style. What about its sound? What can analysis tell us?
Well, estimates suggest it had about a 1-octave range. But importantly, its construction, particularly the sound box and string setup, seems capable of producing what researchers call emotional dissonances.
Emotional dissonances,
Yeah.
like sad or complex chords.
Something like that. Not just simple, pleasing harmonies, but sounds that could convey more complex, maybe even unsettling emotions. Which fits perfectly, doesn't it, with something like the harper's song music for deep, perhaps difficult reflection.
That connection is powerful. And I remember reading that there's evidence of repairs on this lute. Why does that matter?
It matters hugely. It goes right back to that idea of pre-funerary function. If it was just made for the tomb, it would likely be perfect, unused. But the fact that it has repairs, you can see where it was patched up, maybe re-lacquered, tells us Har-Mose played this instrument a lot. It was part of his working life as a musician. It makes it incredibly authentic.
A cherished working tool, not just a grave good.
Exactly. It's a direct link to the soundscape of his life.
So, stepping back then, what's the bigger picture the GM is painting with its focus on sound, using artifacts like this lute?
I think the GM's work, especially projects explicitly named things like melodies from the past, is trying to connect that ancient Nile Valley culture to us today and to global culture through sound. It reinforces that for the Egyptians, music HS wasn't just optional, it was fundamental to their worldview.
That idea of mot sonore you mentioned earlier, sonic order.
Precisely. The belief that the right sounds, the right rhythms and harmonies were literally part of maintaining Mat, the cosmic order, and keeping chaos, or Isfet, at bay. Music was a force for cosmic balance.
It really shifts the perspective. So what's next? Where does the research go from here?
It has to continue being interdisciplinary. combining the hard science of acoustics, measuring the instruments, with the cultural understanding of ethnomusicology, trying to piece together not just the notes, but the meaning behind them. It's about making sure we don't just see ancient Egypt as silent stones, but hear it as this incredibly long-lived, complex symphony.
An enduring symphony.
Yeah.
I like that.
And maybe something for you, the listener, to think about, given that so many of these GEM instruments were clearly used in daily life before the tomb. If you could hear just one sound snippet from back then, maybe the rhythm of drums coordinating workers, or a simple flute tune at sunrise, or maybe Har-Mose playing a quiet, personal song on his lute after a long day, which everyday sound would tell you the most about what it was really like to live back then, away from the giant pyramids and grand temples. What ordinary vibration would bridge that gap?